Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Radcast of the Social Club at the end of this world and the beginning of a new world. And I credit Dr. Rao for the name change. So we're going to start with some personal updates, and then we'll get into the agenda. So personal updates, starting with Adam. Take it away, Adam.
Hey, Jamin. Sorry, I thought I was. Am I still? I'm unmuted, right? So okay. All right. Yeah. I wanted to just go over some drawings that I made real quickly that explain the platform the way I see it, and I haven't got to talk to Jamin about it, yet. But I'll do a screen share here.
That's an agenda item because I wanted to give you a full 5 minutes just for that. So.
Oh, I thought you were okay.
Kind of like, hey, everybody.
Personal update. Well, I'm still going vegetarian. I'm not vegan. I still eat eggs and cheese and trying to take some vitamin B12 and D3. And so I'm doing that, and I've been working diligently on my work. I published a video called "Response to the Arctic News" article on 18 degrees C temperature rise in 2026. By then, and I've been tweeting that a lot and getting a lot of help from people, and so it's starting to get out. I worked on these 6 drawings, which I'll go over later. So that's about it for me. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Adam. Next up is Miles. Take it away, Miles.
Hello, everybody. So I've stopped putting cream in my coffee, and I've been having vegan breakfasts: oatmeal, soy milk, fruit, and I'm enjoying it. This week I will be joining some people from Calgary Climate Hub, and I'm going to be involved in their outreach committee, or outreach node, they like to call it. And they're using a platform or an app called Mobilize. I just joined on this Mobilize app. Also, on Thursday, I will be going to an event called 6 Degrees Calgary, and it's hosted by the former Governor General Adrienne Clarkson, who is a very prominent Canadian, the Honorable, Right Honorable Adrienne Clarkson, and her husband is John Ralston Saul. And I just finished reading his book from 1995, which is still a very current book, called The Unconscious Civilization. And it is so appropriate to what Radish is about and what Dr. Rao is about, namely, we have to make our civilization conscious. So I hope to see him again. I saw him a year ago. He autographed a book that I had, and I hope to get him to autograph this book. And I'll talk and share as much as I can about what Dr. Rao is doing, as well as what Radish and everybody else here is doing. Thank you.
Awesome, Miles. Thank you. Thank you. Great update. Dr. Rao, take it away.
Okay, so we had a premiere of our new movie, A Prayer for Compassion, in New York City, and it was sold out. What 500 people were there. And the next day, we found out that the Pope had replied to Genesis Butler. Yes. And he sent a non-response response. Just 2 sentences, basically thanking her for her concern for the environment and the planet, and that he will pray for her. And that was it. So clearly he's not taking up the challenge. So the $1 Million Vegan Challenge is now debating what to do. So I was going to propose that we join forces with them. And, as part of your march, we can have the $1 Million Vegan Campaign say that if the Pope goes vegan for 30 days, we'll give $1 million or whatever. And, spread the message on veganism and its impact on the environment, and keep the Pope hooked onto this, so that he's constantly in our sights. Okay, so we're not going to give up on him. We're going to keep at it. So I was going to propose that, and I was going to connect you all with the people at the MDV campaign, so that you can coordinate your actions. So that was something I wanted to bring to you at this meeting. And also, I had a really interesting call with a high school in Morocco yesterday. So you should be aware that there are teachers who are using this flipped learning methodology, and so this particular teacher has shown all his students the movie Cowspiracy, and the students then discussed it among themselves, and they came up with a list of questions. And so I spent an hour addressing their questions, and it was amazing how kids can do such good critical thinking that adults are incapable of. Most adults are conditioned out of it, pretty much. So they had some really incisive questions, and I was answering them, and we had a really great conversation, and they have recorded the whole thing, and they are going to now view that again in their class, because just a few members of each class came together to do this questioning. So they're going to go back and show it to their whole class, and then they're going to come back again in 2 weeks. So I think that kind of interaction would be very helpful for all of us if we can do that, with students. Because otherwise it's just a bunch of old people talking together right now, and we need to really get to the kids. Thank you. That's my update.
Beautiful.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit more about the $1 Million Vegan Campaign?
So the $1 Million Vegan Campaign was launched about a couple of months ago, and the purpose of the campaign was to get Pope Francis to go vegan for Lent. And Lent started on March 6th, and it goes on till Easter, so April 20th or whenever Easter is. And so roughly 40 days he would have to go vegan. And if he did that, Blue Horizon International Foundation would donate $1 million to a charity of the Pope's choice, or charity or charities of the Pope's choice. So it was basically a campaign intended to get the Pope to go vegan, or at least get the message out to Catholics that during the season of Lent, they're thinking about their impact on the planet and society. If they could, even if the Pope doesn't go vegan, if the Catholics go vegan, it'll be helpful. So the campaign was launched with newspaper ads, and so newspaper ads in over, I think we got about 500 articles written about it throughout the world. So we got a lot of publicity for it, but the $1 million has not yet been disbursed because Pope hasn't gone vegan yet. So once we got the response from the Pope, which was literally a non-response, then we've been debating what to do. So it's not just, so the Blue Horizon International has put up the money, and the January and a Prayer for Compassion, we are all like partners in this. So we are doing our bit, promoting it within our campaigns, within our social media network, and so on. So that in a gist is the $1 Million Vegan Campaign. It's basically attempting to leverage the Pope to spread our message far and wide.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Rao.
Sure.
All right. We're doing personal updates. Melissa, my queen, if you'd like to give a personal update, now's a good time. Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi again, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Rao, for that inspiring explanation about the children in Morocco. I have a friend who taught there for about a year, and she said that the Moroccan people are very open and active around change, which is kind of contrary to what in the West we believe is happening. So that was really inspiring to hear that the children actually got back in touch with you with questions and entered into a dialogue.
Right.
Here we're organizing an after-school program with the Waldorf children and homeschool children, and building this school of Chinook salmon for the Langley Whale Parade. And we'll have the kids, it's an artful activist project, so we'll have the children also create a banner saying "Restore the Salmon" for the orcas. And Nathan Hale High School students will be shutting down business as usual April 12th to focus entirely the whole school population, including all the staff, on climate change and all the issues around this. And I believe Adam is going to be one of the participants. And I'm hoping to get some First Nations people to come and open with a prayer ceremony and singing and drumming. And I just want to second what you said, that, you know, we really need to, as adults, mature adults, be joining hands with youth and children and working together. They're very smart. They're very awake. They're not patterned like we are or jaded, and they really care. And they want to take action, right action, the majority. So I think the more of that we can do and encourage, the better. So thank you. That's what I had to say. And it's great seeing all you guys.
Thank you, my love. Great to see you. All righty. We're doing personal updates. So if anyone else would like to jump in with a personal update, now's the time to do it. Just jump in. And I'll give my personal update. So we're working, Melissa and I and other colleagues who I'll mention and thank you, Adam, for monitoring the YouTube chat comments there. So Melissa and I and some other colleagues who I'll mention are preparing pretty intensively for the pilgrimage from Buenos Aires to the Vatican in support of Pope Francis, and specifically in support and in promotion of the encyclical he published in 2015 called Laudato Si, which is a book-length encyclical. Here's a copy of it, right? You know, it's the size of a small book. There's this. And so we have some new recruits for the pilgrimage, actually new partners. We have, and I think we may have mentioned this last week as well, so pardon me if I'm repeating myself, but Gordon Fuller, who is originally from Arizona, he's of Hopi descent, and he is an amazingly brilliant person. He's been on the Social Club a couple of times. Kind of hoping he'd be able to join now, if he's able. He and his wife, Kealoha, who's Hawaiian.
Am I supposed to call you?
There's Fred. All right.
Sorry, guys. Hang on.
Hey, Fred. All right. Anyway, so they're going to be joining the pilgrimage. Among the many amazing things about that is Gordon is completely blind. And so he's, you know, we'll be flying to South America, and he'll be on the pilgrimage for about the first month anyway. And he and his partner, Kealoha. Hey, welcome, Uncle Frank. Great to see you, Uncle Frank.
Frank?
And
are you welcoming me, or are you?
I
did you forget my name?
No, well, I didn't forget your name. You're my brother. How on earth am I going to forget your name? And welcome, Fred. But 20 seconds ago, I was welcoming my Uncle Frank.
How do you do?
And who's joining us from New Mexico. And Fred, if you don't mind muting.
I'm trying to mute it right now.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Fair enough. Anyway, so Gordon and Kealoha are coming to be part of the pilgrimage. Michael is already in Argentina. He got there a couple days ago. In fact, let me send him a text right now. Hopefully he can join us. And so it's just all systems go on the pilgrimage, and we're having really wonderful conversations around what that's going to look like. We'll cover that in its own agenda item in a couple of minutes. Aside from that, very excited to hear all the updates on the world news, which it's impossible for any one of us to keep track of. So we'll get to that. And those are my big updates. And we'll talk about South America is the first agenda item, so we'll cover that in earnest in a few minutes here. In the meantime, anyone else want to chime in with any personal updates before we get started? Michael, welcome from Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Hi.
Hey, great to see you, Michael. Welcome. Does anyone else have any personal updates before we get started with the agenda items in earnest? Okay. And by the way, I think now that we've got 10 participants on the social club, I think we may be maxed out. I think other people won't be able to join until someone basically drops off. So that's interesting. It's nice to have a full house. All right. Okay, Fred, I see you're moving your lips.
Hey,
did you want to say something, Fred? And you're muted, Fred. That's why we can't hear you.
Okay, I have to go, sadly. I look forward to seeing the recording of this, but I have some medical things to attend to.
Absolutely.
And Melissa, if you're listening, I sent you a text message. Jesus. And I don't want to go near Ida Culver, but we'll talk later.
Yeah,
okay.
We'll talk later.
All right. Everybody, thank you. Have a great meeting.
Great to see you, Fred. Thanks for taking it.
Jamin, I'll talk to you later.
Will do. All right, brother. Take care. See you soon. All right. Any other personal updates? Okay. So thus concludes the personal update section. On to the agenda. We're going to first talk South America briefly, and then and then the next agenda item will be Adam's going to do some screen share of some drawings he's come up with, and then we'll go into the topic of updates on the world news and what's going on climate-wise, policy-wise, et cetera, et cetera. So starting with South America, first of all, I just want to say that I am extremely grateful for the team that is forming around the South America pilgrimage. Not only the people who are actually going to be flying down and participating in the pilgrimage, Michael generously leading the charge. He's already in Buenos Aires, boots on the ground, doing a whole bunch of preparations for the pilgrimage. But also folks like Dr. Rao, who are participating virtually and offering partnership, which I am very grateful for. Thank you. And I'm just really excited. Just got a text here from Gordon. Let's see what Gordon says. Okay. All right. Gordon's doing well. That's good to hear. I'll just, having mentioned some of the people who are participating, I'm going to focus now on the strategy that we were talking about yesterday. We had a really great meeting yesterday. In fact, we're having meetings approximately every day at approximately 3 p.m. Pacific time. Today, we're definitely meeting at 3 p.m. Pacific. And Dr. Rao, Uncle Frank, and anyone else who's interested in participating in one way or another, please feel free to join that meeting today. And in general, our meetings that we'll have in preparation for the pilgrimage. The basic, so I'll just give a few highlights of kind of how we're, highlights and updates on the South America plan. So we're, rather than having a fixed departure date, like we were tracking basically for April 2nd to be the date that we start the pilgrimage, we have a slightly different strategy now, which is once I get to Buenos Aires, and as more of us get to Buenos Aires, we're going to build on the foundational work that Michael is initiating right now in Buenos Aires, connecting with organizations, including religious organizations and including the Catholic Church. And since Pope Francis is from Buenos Aires and has a huge base of support there, we're going to go to the churches where he was basically stationed and where he delivered Mass regularly, where he ministered, and where he has tremendous base of support. We're going to tell them what we're doing and invite them to participate. And we're going to be putting out a press release and doing a press conference. We might do the press conference literally on the steps of, you know, the church where he was most recently based in Buenos Aires prior to becoming Pope. He was Archbishop of Buenos Aires from like late 90s until 2013 when he became Pope. So we want to go to his friends and supporters and say, look, you know, here's what we're doing. Here's why. Basically, Laudato Si. And we've really boiled the message down to the following mini narrative, which I'll be able to say in literally 60 seconds. Pope Francis authored the Laudato Si, which most people still don't know about. And if they know about it by a different name, Encyclical on Climate Change and Inequality, or Care for Our Common Home. It hasn't really been particularly well branded, and that's part of what we're doing. We're essentially a volunteer marketing department for the Laudato Si. Pope Francis wrote the Laudato Si, and the Laudato Si is the solution. This is an oversimplified narrative, okay? But we're touting the Laudato Si as the solution, not because it has a whole laundry list of specific solutions. It does not. But what it does have is a framework. And so our vision is that starting from this framework, we will be able to develop and implement all of the specific solutions that are needed, including, notably, the world must go vegan. No more meat, no more violence, right? So those are specific solutions. Geoshading is another specific solution. Holistic land management is another specific. Permaculture is another, and on and on and on. But the Laudato Si provides the framework. But rather than saying all that, we're compressing it down to the Laudato Si is the solution. Now, to encapsulate the framework within the Laudato Si in 3 words, I'm pulling 3 words straight out of the encyclical. Those 3 words are bold cultural revolution. Pope Francis is calling for a bold cultural revolution. Vegan 2026 is right at the heart of it. That's revolutionary. Completely transform your diet, your economy, your way of life. Argentine gauchos cowboys of Texas, et cetera, et cetera. There's a complete transformation in culture. Now, the one tweak that we're putting there, so when we get interviewed in South America, rather than saying bold cultural revolution, which might get us either assassinated or thrown in jail in the worst case, we don't want to take any of those risks, of course. We're going to put it in the following terms. Pope Francis is calling for a bold cultural transformation. Transformation, revolution, essentially synonymous, but when you say transformation, you don't get thrown in jail. When you say revolution, you run some risks. Fair enough? And then the conversation just goes from there. And then if they say, well, what's the essence of the transformation? What are you seeking to transform? Rather than bog them down initially in details, the details will come one step later. But the essence of it is, in my articulation, that we need to engage in a transformation where we transform from a society and a civilization centered around the individual, me and mine and my rights and my freedom and my property, and I do what I want, and my hoarding. I get to hoard and accumulate all that I can, raping Mother Earth in the process. We go from a civilization based on the individual to a civilization based on the whole. And when I say the whole, I don't just mean the whole of humanity. I mean the whole of the whole. All humans, all animals, all plants, all ecosystems, all life-supporting systems, from the hydrologic cycle to oceans, atmosphere, everything. The whole. Where we essentially transform into one giant, for lack of a better word, ant colony, where each of us has our function. The beautiful thing about ants, when you see them walking around and doing their thing, no individual ant is trying to hoard for themselves. Each one is basically a cog in a giant machine. I don't like the word machine in this context, but you get my meaning, right? So for me, that's the essence. And then as we go deeper, we say, listen, we need to develop and implement all these solutions. Perhaps the most urgent is veganism. That would be the most radically transformational. And in addition to veganism, we need geoshading, we need holistic land management, we need so many things that need to be transformed, decarbonization, et cetera, et cetera. Melissa just commented, each ant is part of a colony. Totally agree.
Jamin, sorry to interrupt, but just wondering, I don't have the ability to type into the list of who's going to speak next. So
okay, no, you're in the queue. Miles is first in the queue. If you want to be in the queue, either follow Miles' lead or type in your name right into the chat window. Thank you, Miles. So, we'll talk about these big solutions that need to be implemented, and part of the framework of the Laudato Si that's so powerful is he's calling on all of us to come together and enter into a planetary dialogue. And we take that as a starting point for collective intelligence, right? From dialogue, which could be a flat, simple dialogue, to a multidimensional multiverse of collective intelligence, which is my bread and butter, mine and Michael's and many others who work with us on collective intelligence, Adam as well. All of us have contributed to this. And that, in a kind of rough nutshell, is what we're doing in South America. So Miles, you're next in the queue. I also want to prioritize Dr. Rao, since he needs to leave in about 10 minutes, and he has a very generous partnership offer. Miles,
I'll be very quick. I'll be very quick.
Great.
I have
Dr. Rao followed by Dan. Take it away, Miles.
So I have three events I'm attending this week. Meeting tomorrow evening with Calgary Climate Hub Outreach Node. Then on Thursday with the Institute for Canadian Citizenship with Adrian Clarkson, Honorable Adrian Clarkson, and John Ralston Saul. And then that evening, I'm at St. Mary's University for an event. And at all three of these occasions, I can promote your pilgrimage. Do you have a website? Do you have PDFs I could download, print, put onto handouts, or put on both bulletin boards? Thank you.
Awesome, Miles. First of all, thank you for offering to do that. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all that you do in the world. We don't have anything downloadable on a website yet, but let me get a summary to you that you can start with. And when's your first meeting? Just so I've got a deadline for the summary.
Tomorrow evening.
Tomorrow evening.
Meeting with Calgary Climate Hub people.
Very good.
And I'm on a new platform to connect to all these people in Alberta Climate Action and to Calgary Climate Hub. I can disseminate on this new Mobilize app.
Beautiful. Great. Thank you, Miles. All righty, Dr. Rao, I'm kind of volunteering you to chime in if you'd like. Okay, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Sure, yes. So I think this would be an exciting partnership with the $1 Million Vegan Campaign, the Interfaith Vegan Coalition, and a Prayer for Compassion movie. So we've been part of the $1 Million Vegan Campaign, trying to convince Pope to go vegan for Lent, which would be a symbolic thing that he would do that would encourage the 1.5 billion Catholics around the world to start thinking along those lines, this bold cultural transformation that you're talking about. But the response that we got was not satisfactory. Basically, he said nothing. And I think partly because the Catholic Church is heavily invested in these industries, and so there's a lot of business interest going on. And I'm sure he has to take all that into consideration. But we need to push him. So because he has said all the right things, but he's not doing it. And so this is why I'm offering to connect you all with the MDV campaign, with the Prayer for Compassion people, and with the Interfaith Vegan Coalition founders, so that we can pull our resources together and help each other out. And maybe, that could be part of the theme of the pilgrimage. Please do this for 30 days at least, and we'll give $1 million to charity of your choice. So that puts the campaign still front and center, and takes it beyond. Otherwise, right now, we are asking him to have lunch with Genesis Butler. He hasn't replied to that, so that's too small. I really think it needs to continue, and we need to continue pushing him to follow up on his words and to actually do what he said that we should all be doing. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I think it'll be great to have a partnership like that, and I think it'll basically move both of us forward in a much bigger way, both sides. So I think it'll be a great synergy.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let's discuss that. Might you have time today at 3 o'clock Pacific, which I think might be 4 o'clock your time?
Yeah, I have time at 3 o'clock. I can come.
Okay, great.
Actually, we see Arizona is not on daylight savings.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so you're Pacific time for a while.
No, we are Pacific time right now. Yes.
Good to know. Good to know. All right. Good. I'll send you the link for 3 o'clock today.
Okay, wonderful.
Wonderful. Great. All right. So we've got 3 other folks next in the queue. We've got Dan, followed by Adam, followed by Adam, followed by Miles, followed by Melissa. I think, followed by Melissa. Sorry. Okay. So take it away, Dan.
Yeah. So a few thoughts concerning the discussion. You've heard from me before concerning my problem and other people's problem with the Pope and the Catholic Church. And I think we all realize he's quite compromised. And what isn't clear is how that's going to unfold. But I don't think it's realistic to expect much of anything from him. And I just would, I guess, and this is kind of maybe a world news thing, but I found it interesting that in Iceland, where has a small population, in Iceland, women have significant influence in terms of the power. And I think that it's kind of interesting that two things. Iceland has jailed, incarcerated the bankers, the neoliberal bankers who basically are corrupt and psychopathic. And Iceland is practically the only place that has seriously taken some action. They also came out with a statement along the lines of declaring that organized religions are weapons of mass destruction. And this is just a small kind of emergence of consciousness. And until we're able to discuss the problems with organized religion and what it really is, not that it isn't in some ways adaptive. As was pointed out, Pope Francis had his gathering to discuss the problem with child sexual abuse. But there was no serious discussion of the bigger problem that the Catholic Church has in terms of its credibility and legitimacy, which is in the Vatican, a significant number of the individuals there are gay, homosexual, and they have lived for decades, and who knows how far back, with consciously covering up the child sexual abuse. They think they can just step up now, and this is Pope Francis. He's going to step up and he's going to say, oh, this was wrong, we shouldn't have allowed it to continue, and we're going to make reforms. I will not respect Pope Francis until he can stand up and repent as an individual for what he and the other people in the hierarchy have done. And furthermore, again, as some have suggested, it's probably part of the repentance ought to be he ought to resign. Other cultures, like say Japan, for example, when somebody who's head of a corporation or other important person messes up, they come out and they publicly repent for what they did and take some consequences for what they've done. And this is a huge problem. And so, while I certainly support the effort of going on this pilgrimage to the Pope, I can almost guarantee you will not get much of a response from the Pope. He's just not going to be able to go there for reasons which aren't really that good, but they're there. I would say I want to point out something else too about so you're going to go through Argentina, Uruguay, into Brazil, across the ocean, up through West Africa. And aside from security concerns, which maybe you're actually taking care of, I think as far as the messaging goes, we have a problem right now with mass migrations because of climate change, abrupt exponential climate change, not some linear, lots of time. So Central America is one of the, it's a ground zero for climate change. So what do we have going on? And maybe the Pope has said something about it. Okay, I'll finish up. Just give me 2 more minutes here, Jamin. Maybe he said something about it and I'm not aware of it, but it seems to me, he likes to say, we should accept the migrations, but I don't really hear a real pounding and hammering and underlining about the migrations being caused by abrupt climate change. And the other thing is, we have this big debate about immigration here in the United States. It is so psychopathic because what you have going on is, on the one hand, you've got, Donald Trump and, others basically stating we've got to hold back these, hordes of criminals, whatever, he uses to characterize it. And then he gets pushback. You're being racist. You're discriminating against the brown people, etc. The real problem is the United States, for a long time, because of their economic policies, has forced people to migrate up into our meat packing plants, etc., from their self-sustaining farms. And the thing is, there's no real acknowledgement of what NAFTA did, allowed the agribusinesses to come in. The agribusinesses, the grain people, essentially, and other agricultural products. And now what we have is we have these people in Central America because they're suffering drought. They're between the two oceans, and they're really vulnerable to hurricanes, etc. They can't survive, and that's why they're trying to come up. So there needs to be some sort of a demand that those in power take responsibility. And so I just wanted to throw that in there. I think it should be incorporated in the messaging of any pilgrimage to, Pope Francis. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Dan. And just to remind everyone, when I hold up number of fingers for 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6, that's not saying stop talking. It's just a guideline. And we have, again, the soft guideline that we try to keep it at 5 minutes or less, but it's okay to go over from time to time. Thank you, Dan. Next up is Adam. Take it away, Adam. Okay, Adam may have stepped. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Adam. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. I was just trying to do something. First of all, just to respond to what Dan said about the Catholics, my personal opinion is that the Catholics, from the very beginning, they set up a rule that breaks the natural law, and that is the rule of celibacy. So when you break a natural law, you're going to have consequences. And one of the consequences of celibacy is you go crazy when you for sex. And I don't think that these priests entered the priesthood intending to become homosexuals or do any of the things they think. I think they entered the priesthood with good, solid reasons. They were young, they wanted to be there, but then once they got into it and figured out the ramifications of that, that's what I think happened. And so the next thing I want to go on to is I would like to just do a screen share here.
Actually, Adam, that's its own agenda item, and that's immediately following the current one. But Melissa and I and probably others have more to say on South America before we get to that. So if you don't mind just being patient on that, and then I'll kick that off as its own agenda item. But we're still on South America, still on the pilgrimage right now. Oh,
I see. Okay. Yeah, South America. The only thing I had to say was so that Dr. Rao and his website, which is I had it written down here someplace.
Climate Healers.
Climate Healers, that's right. ClimateHealers.org, I believe. Anyway, so I did put it on my website and linked you, and along with RCI and a bunch of others. So then I noticed that you said that you wanted to join with this pilgrimage, but the $1 million campaign, and that goes through Easter, which is April 21st. So I just wondered how that would fit in, and then that's all I have for right now. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Adam. I'll let Dr. Rao respond briefly to that before we go on to Melissa.
Right. So the $1 million campaign was originally, it was intended for Lent. which is from March 6th through April 21st. But it's an open-ended campaign, really. It's really it's saying we have $1 million here. We can give it to charities of your choice, but please go vegan. So because of that, it's not just going to be Lent. It's going to continue beyond Lent. If he says no for Lent, we're not going to stop.
Very good.
Which he has said no.
Right. Very good. Great. Thanks, Dr. Rao. All right. Next up is Melissa, my queen. Take it away, Melissa.
Okay. Yeah. This kind of, what my comments kind of a combination feedback to Dr. Rao and Dan, actually. And I'd like to suggest, Dr. Rao, that we start a letter campaign or a postcard campaign with children and with adults, and send these to the Pope about the challenge. So when on the Living Orca Mural project here on Whidbey, we had a petition that people could sign, and we got a number of signatures asking him to take the dams down off the Snake River to help allow the Chinook salmon to get back to their ancestral spawning grounds so they can survive and thrive and feed the orcas. We accompanied that with a letter that was inspired by Matthew Fox's book, Order of the Sacred Earth, where he says, what we need now are compassionate leaders who will step up courageously to do the right thing. And in the letter that Jamin and I wrote to Jay Inslee, we said something of the same nature. So it was coming from this place of love, not coming from this place of dissent and encouragement. We also sent some drawings that children had done of orca whales with me at a summer art camp. He has since that time asked his task force to start putting culverts in the berms on the Snake River to help the Chinook return to their spawning grounds. I don't know if that packet that went to his office was the part of the source of inspiration for him to take this action, but I'd like to think so. And also recently, a number of actions have been taken around the orcas, and a number of my friends on Facebook who know the work that we are doing here as artists and people who care about the oceans and the Chinook and the orcas actually have commented saying, I think that this work that you are doing is having an impact to bring change. And whether or not that is correct, it is still the energy that's going out there that I believe does influence. So just going back to Dan's comments, Dan, I think, all your comments are wise and correct, but I would still like us or encourage us to come from this place of love in all our interactions and challenges to politicians, to religious leaders, etc., in this ask for change. And the Catholic Church has done a lot of harm over the years, thousands of years, actually, when you think of like Henry Tudor. There's a big history of a lot of stuff going on there that's not very pretty. But we are at a strange time, a critical time, which affects all of us. And it's kind of out of our hands in a way too, this climate change thing. So I think I just want to encourage us to kind of actively seek a loving, encourage shame. So I'm going to end, but start like a new doctor else who wants to do that, collect draw, and we could do a whole around how drawings.
Sweetie, you're breaking up real bad. Dr. Ralph, you are free.
Thanks.
Sweetie, you're breaking up real bad.
Yeah.
We heard everything you said up till about 15 seconds ago, and definitely got the gist of it. But now it got really broken.
I'll just jump in with a comment to that end,
Okay.
if I could.
Okay.
Namely, Dr. Rao made a good point. I've experienced that when I present ecological emergency to people, they kind of shut down. You can see them suffering some cognitive dissonance. And Dr. Rao made a very good point about always showing the love and the light every time you use, these serious, upsetting terms like ecological emergency. And I would propose I might actually shift to saying we're in a Mother Earth emergency, and then talk about love and light being the answer every time I say that. Anyway, thank you, Melissa.
Great, thanks, Miles. Jamin is up next, followed by Dan in the queue. The first thing I want to say is so we've got this kind of like soft 5-minute rule, right? But I really like that Miles just jumped in and said something quickly, right? So here's an amendment to the whole queue and 5-minute rule kind of thing that I'd like to propose, is that, if you have something, lengthy to say, let's say a couple of minutes or more, get in the queue like that. If you have a quick comment, like, I don't know, 30 seconds-ish after someone has made their statement, feel free to just jump in like Miles did. So please follow Miles's lead if you have a quick comment to make after someone has spoken. Okay? Does that sound fair? Everybody like that? Good. I see some thumbs up. I see some nods. Good. Okay, great. So a lot of really good comments have been made. Dan, I really appreciate your comments about Iceland, jailing the bankers, and thanks, Melissa, and also the leadership role that women play. I'm undergoing my own personal transformation in that regard, and really making sure we include women in everything that we do. And I'm so excited that we have two amazing women leaders who will be on the pilgrimage in South America, my queen Melissa and Kealoha, as I mentioned earlier. And more women welcome. Sister Victoria, please quit your job and come to South America. I'm serious. This is our last stand. Not to put you on the spot, sister.
I know. I'll talk to you about this that week, because I'm thinking of it. If I can pull it off, it just, I think it's, you're right.
Sell your house, sell your car, buy a backpack and some Gatorade, and I'll meet you in Buenos Aires. Melissa seconds the motion. No, really, you would be such a powerhouse. You are such a powerhouse. And as far as as far as the sins of committed within the Catholic Church in the name of Catholicism or clandestinely or whatever, Dan, your points are very well taken, and I'm painfully aware of the sins of the Catholic Church and the harms that they cause. I myself am a victim of a pedophile, or was a victim as a child, and so I know firsthand the extreme harm caused by pedophilia, so it is not without any lack of sensitivity to the harms caused to the victims or the general problems that I promote Pope Francis, and I get flack from this regularly, and I'm sure I'll get a lot more as we get this pilgrimage underway. And I'm taking somewhat of a very pragmatic approach here, and just kind of doing a scan and saying, look, of all the world leaders or potential world leaders, who can we follow right now? Who is perhaps setting the best example? And none of us are perfect, and none of our institutions are perfect. In fact, we're seeing massive imperfection across the board. There's my own 4-minute mark. And having said all that, I do see Pope Francis as occupying an extremely special and privileged position among all the primates, among all the humans, as being the head of the biggest, oldest, most organized religion. Well, not the oldest, but, you know, the most organized, influential religion and institution in the world, the Catholic Church. And because he's taken such a powerful lead with the Laudato Si and with so many other things that he's done recently, the campaign against the pedophiles, the campaign against the Nazis, and bringing to light everything that the Catholic Church and Pope Pius did in collaborating with the Nazis in World War II, and very recently reaching out to the heads of so many other religions. Just in the last couple of months, met with Muslim leaders in the Middle East, and in the last week or so met with, I think it's called the Prophet, being the head of the Mormon religion, had the Prophet of the Mormon religion, the Mormon Church, out to the Vatican for a full day, had breakfast, lunch, and dinner with him, and they prayed all day. So he's doing this outreach, this interfaith outreach. I'm at a little over 5 minutes. I think that between the interfaith, bringing all the different religions together to form a united front for Mother Earth, I think that simply has the best potential to instigate and orchestrate and lead this bold cultural transformation that we so urgently need. Those are my comments now. I'm at minute 6. Again, jump in, anyone with quick comments now, and then followed by Dan. So Dan, if you don't mind just pausing for 5 seconds to see if folks have any quick comments, and then you can take it away, Dan.
Okay, again, my thought is, and again, in Iceland, they did take care of the bankers. They understood the psychopathy that was going on, but they also, in Iceland, which in a lot of ways is very progressive, they called out the organized religions. Let me give you an example. I don't know if it's going to be that good, of something that's happening right now in the United States politically. You know, we have this woman who is a representative from Minnesota, Ilhan Omar. Now, she's created this, you know, huge storm over her comments that Jewish people in the United States who are in positions of influence have a dual loyalty to Israel, and that's created this, you know, big storm of, you know, she's anti-Semitic, et cetera, et cetera. Here's a way of looking at this, and something she ought to do herself. It is this. Yes, you know, probably most people who are Jewish in the United States and elsewhere view Israel as being extremely significant. It's kind of like the homeland of the tribe, the Jewish tribe. And if you're a member of a tribe, whether it's Jewish, Muslim, Catholic, Hindu, you're going to have been probably programmed, imprinted with loyalty to the tribe. And where Ilhan Omar makes a mistake, even though, yeah, you know, of course, there's this tribalism going, you know, Jewish tribalism. You know, the God of all the people of the book is a tribal God. You know, it's pretty clear if you step back and can really use your reason to look at it. But what she's not able to do is to step up and say, you know, I have a tribal loyalty too, to Islam, to the Muslim tribe. And the problem is, you know, when you have tribalism going on, which is hardwired into us, what happens is it results in all sorts of psychopathic behaviors in the interests of the tribe. In other words, you can lie, you can cheat, you can exploit other tribes, you know, that kind of thing. The good books allow that. And so what you get is you get this kind of a dynamic where, for example, everybody who's in Israel or part of the tribe wherever knows in their deep part of their, you know, I don't know, unconscious and sometimes maybe conscious, they know perfectly well that if weaker tribes, like in this case, a lot of the Muslim tribes, had the ability, they would probably just exterminate the Jews, you know, that wouldn't be any kind of a problem. So when you have that kind of a dynamic, whether it's out of revenge or it's because what God wants to happen, you just can't get any kind of cooperation. And we have this going on with China and the, you know, Caucasian English-speaking countries. If you want to solve things, you've got to be able to step up and in a sense, look at the beliefs. One final thing, and I'll shut up, is this. When we talk about a cultural revolution or transformation, we need to be aware, we need to have some understanding or agreement as to what is a culture. What does a culture do? Mostly a culture is a bunch of socialized, imprinted beliefs that we all get exposed to as children. We take it as the gospel. We end up, if you're in a different tribe, you end up having sort of different ideas about maybe what's appropriate. Well, so a culture is about imprinted beliefs, and it's also about these hardwired things that go beyond beliefs, where we are not imprinted, but just born, hardwired, with a need for fairness and respect. And so, you know, I'm going to shut up now, but it's another whole issue, you know, where the psychopathy in the tribes or in the elites who are at the top of some of these tribes is to convince people that essentially they're not entitled to a lot of things because they're inferior. And anyway, I'm going to shut up, but I do really think that you have to have a meta-level discussion about what it is we're about, and finally, the social insect idea, you know, or concept, you know, it's basically social insects are pretty much, if you're going to humanize them, are authoritarian, bureaucratic cultures, you know. All right, I'm done. Thank you for letting me ramble for a while, folks.
Absolutely, Dan. It's not rambling. You have very, very good points, and I really appreciate it. All right, per the new rule, I'm gonna pause, see if anyone has any quick interjections based on follow-ons on what Dan said before the next person in the queue, who happens to be myself.
I do. I'd just like to say, Dan, I completely agree with you. And I completely agree with you, Jamin, that we have to try. I mean, he is certainly, I agree with you. And I won't even go into all the ways I agree with you, Dan, but I do think that he commands a lot of power right now, and it's definitely worth a try. That's my 2 cents.
Beautiful, Victoria. Thank you.
I'll give my 2 cents, I guess, because I don't agree with Dan. Because Dan sounds pretty like he pushes a lot of blame on people, and I don't think we can really blame anybody. And my position is that we've all been under the influence of a poison, and the reason we're all doing these crazy things is because we're all under the influence of this poison. And as such, I don't think that we need to blame anybody, and blaming won't help everybody come together. We need to come together as a mankind. We can't come together if we're blaming everybody. We need to give everybody amnesty, because we'd have a choice to be born into this, and you don't get a choice into the world you're born into. So you could have been born into the world that the man was born in that stands out on the street corner with his homeless sign, or you could have been born into the world of the President of the United States. You know, you don't get a choice. So, or you could have been the Pope. You know, I don't know. I'm just not for blame. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Adam. Really good stuff. You know, I'm next in the queue, so I'll just jump in and get the timer going. I fundamentally agree with Dan, what he's saying. I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, one of the most ethnically, culturally diverse places on the planet, if not the most diverse. And I am Hispanic. I look white. I am Hispanic. I also have some Jewish ancestry. So, you know, I'm a proud mix. And I have a lot of friends of a lot of different faiths, a lot of Muslim friends, a lot of Jewish friends, etc. And so I've seen different sides of the issue, the very pro-Israel side, the Muslim perspective that, hey, the Jews are doing all these terrible things to us, etc., etc. And so I fundamentally agree that tribalism is a big problem. Tribalism exists. I'm sure there's some good things with, with perhaps, good things associated with tribalism and culture and all that, but there's also some really negative things and all the wars and everything else. But what I want to comment on is that with the whole interfaith outreach that Pope Francis is doing, I'm going to state my thesis, and then I'll say why I think why I believe in this thesis. My thesis is that in doing all this interfaith outreach to Muslims, to Mormons, to Jews, to all the different religions, that essentially the net effect of all of that, if it's successful in bringing us all together as a human community, the net effect of that will be to largely, but not entirely, disappear and blur and eliminate these divisions between humanity. So, because, our proposal to implement the vision of the Laudato Si is that Pope Francis part of our proposal is that he form a council of religious leaders spanning all the world's religions, not just religions, but peoples, spiritual practices, all the First Nations represented, etc., but form this huge council that spans all the peoples and tribes of the world. And so that the leadership, can form consensus around the imperative of saving life on earth, and then jointly together put out global communication, starting with a massive press conference, perhaps a speaking tour, et cetera, to the whole world that, hey, we all need to come together, and we all need to come together and dialogue together, et cetera. But anyway, my fundamental thesis is that we can blur these lines and essentially tear down the walls. So that's my comment. I think Dan is next in the queue. But again, let's pause for a moment in case folks want to jump in with quick comments. So quick pause, and then I'll kick you off, Dan.
Yeah, I'll just jump in with a quick comment. We said Mother Earth is in an emergency, and love and light is the solution. And we really are going to be coming to realize that we are all one, and deep inside us, in our deep soul psyche, that I believe love is the image of God. And I would propose that reconciliation is the definition of love that we need. And reconciliation will move us to realize that we are all, as Greta Thunberg says, we are all climate leaders. And the Pope will actually get pulled along by the masses of Catholics, and we'll all rise up to be the climate leaders. And truth will be determined as to, the nature of money that Adam talks to. We'll really drill into the truth. Thank you.
I think one leads to the other.
Victoria, you want to elaborate on that just a little bit?
No, I just think that if enough people hear the message, the leaders will follow. Sometimes it's not from the top down. That's just my thought.
Beautiful, beautiful. And the pilgrimage is a case in point. Bottom up, influencing the leaders. Very good. Okay, great. Next up is Dan. Take it away, Dan.
Yeah, I just want to comment on a couple of issues. So, and Adam, I recall way back at some very early stage when we were doing the social club, and I think I was talking about the importance of shame/guilt, and that got some negative feedback. I think you were one of them, but some people had a problem with that. Let me, just say a couple of things. Emotions are hardwired in. We all have these emotions. And fear, anxiety, and shame, guilt are the two emotions that allow us to contemplate consequences of our actions. Now, a lot of times guilt is differentiated from shame in the sense that shame kind of triggers off a desire to hide, whether that's through dishonesty, withdrawal, or sometimes just using anger to kind of cover up what it is you've done. And shame is very painful. It's not necessarily a great emotion in and of itself, although it does cause you to have conformity to group standards and expectations. But guilt is kind of an outgrowth of shame. And guilt is something which makes you want to apologize, to repent for the harm that you have caused. So I just think that, I got to say, Pope Francis and other religious leaders, and these religions themselves, they need to be, at this point in time, they need to role model, not, like when Pope Francis say, oh, we're going to have reforms, we can't allow all this child sexual abuse to continue on. You've allowed it to go on for decades. You have a lot of responsibility. And since part of your religion is, you have confession, right? You go into the priest and you say, Father, I've sinned, blah, blah, blah. And you say what the things are you're feeling guilty about. And you're forgiven. And forgiveness is very appropriate in a certain spiritual sense. But the thing is, I don't see that he's doing it, and I don't think we're going to see it from the rest of the hierarchy. And and I think it's a problem. The message to him would be, yeah, you're totally right, Francis, about the problems with climate change, but at this point in time, I just cannot imagine how other religions, which basically, just like Catholicism, condemns homosexuality, is going to be able to step up and say, oh yeah, we'll really get behind Pope Francis's leadership. Aside from the other tribalistic hostilities, etc. So, but again, just going back to, fear, anxiety, and shame, guilt. These are the two emotions we have, which allow us to think about the consequences of what we're planning to do or what we have done. And so I just kind of view them in a positive way. Love, love is, again, what do we mean by love? It can be, I think there's an altruistic kind of love. I always felt that, Christ actually represented that it was a tremendous softening and a kind of a tremendous progress within these religions, that follow the Old Testament, etc. But the God the Father is the same. Jesus Christ is the Son, not the Father in the religious narrative. And the Father is the same Old Testament God. That Father is jealous. That Father is capable of rage and revenge, etc., etc. It's all there in the Old Testament. It's not hidden. And so again, I really think that climate change is something which does require cooperation and coming together. And I think, I guess I would say theoretically, Pope Francis, if he were able to really get a handle on his position as a role model in terms of repentance, it would be a great thing. I don't think he's going to be able to do that. I think right now he's probably, he's got all sorts of probably kind of Machiavellian kinds of things going on where how can I preserve the credibility of the leadership, myself, the church, etc. And one final thing, again, when it comes to the religions, God is all powerful, omniscient, and again, people who are fundamentalist believers in these religions actually they've been programmed with the belief that God could, in a metaphorical heartbeat, clear up the problems with the climate, or God could destroy the world. It's in God's hands. Now, I don't know how, when you have these kind of beliefs among the fundamentalist followers, which are great in number in all of these religions, I don't know how you could really expect very much. And so I don't know, maybe somehow the messaging could kind of be altered again. I do support the idea of the pilgrimage and the idea of kind of trying to get the support. All right, I will stop. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dan. Any follow-up comments? And then the next agenda item will be Adam will be up and he'll do a screen share. It looks like Miles has a comment. Take it away, Miles.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think, this is where the youth are going to be so important if we are going to turn this ship around, because they haven't, I'm hoping that in their youth, they're not jaded and they haven't been, brainwashed, that the goodness in them, the natural love in a child, and the optimism. They may say, I'm not buying into all this religion if it's not actually based on truly reconciling, what is going on, and that, we're going to call out deception for what it is. And if that means that, maybe the whole hierarchy of a lot of these religions fractures and collapses, well, that's what's needed, perhaps.
Good stuff. Thank you, Miles. All righty. Looks like no more comments at the moment on that. So let's bring that unless anyone else has any other quick comments, we'll bring that to a close and turn it over to Adam, who's going to screen share some drawings for us. Take it away, Adam.
Thank you, Jamin. Yeah, so I'm going to do a screen share here and share some drawings that I wrote or made here in this last week. And so I want to go here. Do you see this?
We see 1 billion people.
Okay, so you see here it says 300K, and this is today. And I don't know if you can see this faint line that I've drawn on here. This is a population growth, and I drew it with my mouse, so it's not really perfectly accurate.
And
but
Adam, is the 300K 300,000 years ago?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Yes. So anthropology tells us that Homo sapien people began back here about 300,000 years ago in Africa, and we spread around the world from there. And during all this time, this isn't perfectly accurate, but the population was very low. And it didn't really start to take off until about 5,000 or 7,000 years ago, depending on how you look at it. But I say 5,000 is when, and it's when civilizations happened. And then all of a sudden it just goes like crazy. So it's like some blip happened. If this was an EKG chart, and you'd see this huge blip, and that's not the entire of it. This is only 1 billion people. When you look at it in perspective, here's 300,000, here's today. Well, the population's clear up here. So I wanted to point this out at the Nathan Hale High School when I go there, use these graphs. And the main thing to point out here is, and Dan might pay attention to this, is that after we became civilized, it was at this point right here, when we became civilized and we took things off. Since then, we don't compare. If you go to our schools, our colleges, our grammar schools, we never compare our lives to our hunter and gatherer ancestors that lived so long on the earth. We always go back to pre-civilized days, which I think just really gives us a lack of not being able to see ourselves, because we don't compare ourselves to prehistoric, to a civilization, pre-civilization life, which we lived, for 300,000 years without destroying the world.
Adam, if I can just clarify, I think what you meant to say was we compare ourselves to pre-industrial, not pre-civilization. And
we compare ourselves to civilization, to prior civilized life. We don't compare. We compare ourselves to from this point on. We don't compare ourselves from this point back. Most people think of people from this point back as the Stone Age people that still swang from trees, and that's not true at all. The anthropologists say that, well, the Homo sapiens had brains like ours. Anyway, I just wanted to bring those two graphics up, and then I made 6 drawings because I posted on Twitter and on YouTube, but I've been twittering this. I wrote my last paper was called Response to Arctic News Article on Rise of 18 degrees Celsius by 2026. And I want to follow it up with a description of the platform, and I call it the collective intelligence of all mankind. So this is basically the general overview. Is one I'll probably tweak this on with some explanation on it, but I want to keep the AI separated and off the internet. So there's then in this plan set that for this platform I'm talking about, there'll be a portion of it that's on the internet, and that is this side over here. And then there's a portion of it that's off the internet. And then to talk to the AI, it has to go through, the way I see it, it goes through some kind of a manual transfer, like scanning and then feeding into the AI. And so here I talk about what's located inside the facility. You got the AI, you have the manual transfer. The AI works to give us answers to unsolvable issues. The manual transfer may go straight to the model, but I would go into the AI right now. So the AI helps create a model and a simulation, but at no time is any of this stuff attached to the internet. And the students, I think the students or youth, young people, should have control over this site. They should have control over the on-off. It's their future we're building. And so my feeling is that they would be the best police to watch out for it. And so then this page, I talk about the collective intelligence of all man, how you just log on and then you're in the collective intelligence. And the collective intelligence is made of topic teams. And there can also be search teams, which can be also a lot of students. Basically, we do our searches. We try to not use the AI as much as we can. I call it AI. There's different forms of AI. There's weak and normal, which we use today in our search engines and stuff, and on our phones. It's the artificial super intelligence that's the scary one, and that's the one I'm trying to show protected here. And then the next page talks about the plans. The plan set really is the vision for the road to life, and then the council. The council chambers is basically the home for the collective intelligence of all mankind. It's where everybody can meet face to face and talk with a broken down, no language barrier. And the topic teams will meet in here, and basically the topics will be the different divisions of the plan set, which I've just mentioned a few here. For example, there'll probably be thousands of them. Then I got normal computer processing here, which is on the internet because we're already attached the internet to it. So we try to do as much as we can with normal computer processing. And then my final page is I talk about how when you join the platform, there's two requisites. One, you agree that we're going to save, that the purpose is to establish a vision for the sustainable future for our children. And then the second prerequisite is that you agree to fill out a survey. So I've got an example here of a survey with 2,600 questions, and each they're numbered questions, and each question has a value of, like, I put it on 1 to 5, and then I just put a hypothetical marked them there 1 to 5. My answers, I don't know what the questions are, but if you draw a line from one dot to the next, you get a signature. And it's not going to take 2,600 to get a unique signature, but it would only take not that many. But you can see how each profile would have its own signature. So it'd be pretty impossible to be mistaken. So they start out by filling these profiles out, or these surveys out, and that establishes their profile, and they can change it. And so anyway, that's what I wanted to share there. And now I'll stop my screen sharing here. Let's see if I can turn that off. I guess I turned it off. So I'll just go ahead and see if anybody has any questions or anything, and that's all I wanted to print out there.
Beautiful. Good stuff, Adam. Yeah. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I think it's interesting how you have the students right up there in control. I would also wonder if we can, if you might impose the feminine into this, like clan mothers and their wisdom. You know, we're talking Mother Earth, and I don't think we should. I think we need to reconnect back to that divine feminine as well. Just a thought.
Good.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead, Adam. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's millions of thoughts and millions of ideas and ways to look at things. And so that's the purpose of building a platform like this. So everybody can have a place to come and put their own feelings and thoughts out. And the idea of these surveys is they would be so extensive that by the time you got done filling it out, the computer would be able to analyze those through spreadsheets and get your profile and pretty much have a picture of how you think. And then if all the people that fill out the surveys, if it extrapolates between all those, then he gets a pretty good idea of how the collective intelligence of all mankind thinks. If you know how all mankind thinks, you can put those parameters into the model. And so, you know, your idea is well taken about the feminine, but it should be, I think it should be analyzed along with everything else, which can be done on this website.
Thanks to Adam. I'm going to have to say goodbye and catch you guys on the replay. So great conversation. Thank you.
Very good. Great seeing you, Miles, as always. We'll follow up.
Can I just jump in with a quick comment on yeah, thanks. This will be very quick. So when we're looking at the youth, you know, the information that is provided to the young people is really critical because, you know, when we're children, we are totally hardwired to take in whatever the elders in the community tell us is the truth, what's right, what's wrong, etc. As you start to get near to adolescence, some people will be more precocious than others. As you start to get near to adolescence, the ability to critically think things evolves because the brain reaches that point. So at that point, and this is why a lot of times adolescents rebel or pre-adolescents rebel, is because now they can critically think about a lot of things and see that maybe what the elders told them doesn't make much sense. And so they rebel because they can now critically think some things. But after a while, you know, they will continually get a different kind of socialization as they move into the adult world and they learn they got to buckle down or whatever is told to them. But I think that for the young people, they need to get the information about what's going on with climate change at this at the critical juncture. You know, some people, when they're 10 or 11 years old, they're precocious, they can really critically think. Others are going to take a while, maybe till they get to be 14 or 15. But this is a critical juncture, and what they have to critically think about is crucial. And, you know, now, you know, climate change is what they need to understand, what they need to really appreciate. And so I just wanted to mention that developmental process.
I'd like to ask you a question, Dan. Remember the graph I showed with the blip on it, where all of a sudden mankind changes. It goes for almost 300,000 years, basically living in harmony with the earth. And then something happens to us and our population goes asymptotic, and all of a sudden we start destroying the earth, and we stop living in harmony with the earth. So do you agree that education in our culture does not teach very much? It does not compare our ways with the hunter and gatherers. It pretty much only compares with civilized life. Even the Bible only talks about the Garden of Eden for the first 3 chapters of the book of Genesis. The entire rest of the Bible is about mankind after he left the Garden of Eden. And we were already screwed up then. We had already eaten the poisoned fruit, according to God. And so we had already, something happened to us to make us go up on this blip. So I wonder what you thought about that.
Yeah, well, a couple of thoughts. So I agree that mankind definitely lost the kind of morality, ethics that permeates hunter-gatherer kinds of cultures. And probably that just has a lot to do with hunter-gatherer cultures are really faced with survival day to day, season to season, and it requires cooperation and altruistic sacrifice. They always condemn hoarding of money. Well, there isn't going to be money in the same sense that we've evolved it, but they definitely always condemn that, because you can't survive if members are being selfish or hoarding food that they should be sharing with the entire group. And I would also Adam, like your designation of kind of money being the problem. I do agree that money hoarding and kind of the almost stimulus response kind of patterning is a huge. It's just an enormous kind of a problem. But I would say again, going to the religions, back in the day when the book was created, we had very low population in terms of the globe. And but what does the good book say? Be fruitful and multiply, which is a practical matter if you're living in a hunting gathering tribe in certain circumstances, because the tribe that has more men that are trained to be warriors for the tribe are going to be able to overwhelm smaller groupings. And you can look at military history over time, and you can kind of see the beef. But the problem is, because there's never any reflection on the books, the good books, we still live today with these religions where it's still be fruitful and multiply. That is entirely stupid, given the fact that we have this overpopulation and limited resource kind of a problem.
Dan,
yeah.
Let me point out to you that when you talk about military history and these religions and stuff, all this stuff happened after we left the Garden of Eden, after we stopped being hunters and gatherers. See, and we don't study the hunters and gatherers. So what I found in my studies is their populations are very low, like 10 million people worldwide, even less. And so they didn't have to war. They lived in the Garden of Eden. The earth was full of food. And if you, even modern day our hunter-gatherers think that they don't want to be like civilized man because they think we're crazy. And if you look at, remember that chart I showed, the blip, it shows that something has happened to mankind. And the main thing that happened was a change in mindset. Because when we were hunter-gatherers, we had a mindset that said that allowed us to live in harmony with each other and the earth. But when we went up the blip, we adopted a different mindset. And I think that what we did was we started planting and herding. And even Joseph Campbell says that the herders were the warrior side because they had to defend their animals. But there was a big mindset change that went on there, because there's a difference between killing animals like the hunter-gatherers did. They killed them with respect. They had ceremonies, and they were very careful and respectful, and they'd ask the animals if they could kill them, things like that. They were very respectful. But when we started using money, that caused a different mindset, which caused us to not respect the animals or not respect all life. So it changed that. And money was, the first form of money was animals. And then it turned into the stock market and stocks and bonds and things like that. It's just now our whole culture, everything is permeated by money. And all we do in our education is compare back to civilized life. We never compare back to our hunter and gatherers. And I think that's really a sad mistake.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that the hunter-gatherer culture has many, many positive features, which we should be discussing. But and again, the Bible, the Old Testament, and everything that is kind of rolled off of that is about tribal domination. Yahweh, the original tribal God, which is really still the same God for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And that is again, all you have to do is step back, use your critical thinking, and read the Old Testament. And, it's all about loyalty, with the one tribe being God's chosen tribe, and the others are viewed as either enemies or potential enemies. And they were open for pillaging, rape, exploitation, and Yahweh, the God, basically, in some cases, just simply orders it. This is what you do. Go ahead and commit genocide, and by the way, take all of the resources. And you got
to remember, though, the whole Old Testament is about life after we left the Garden of Eden. So you would expect that since mankind left the Garden of Eden and committed his first sin, before then we didn't even know we were naked. We lived pure, and we learned how, and for a long time. So we must have perfected our ways of living pretty good. 300,000 years is, if you calculate 25 years as a generation, that's 12,000 generations. But if we say that civilized man is 5,000 generations, that's only 200, or 5,000 years, that's only 200 generations. So it's been a striking difference.
Wow, really good conversation, and I just have two comments. Number one, this whole conversation is a a really, really good one, because it puts things in perspective from, you know, the contrast between essentially what our species was when we were part of the garden, you know, essentially yet another species, right? Roaming around, eating stuff, you know, mating, living, sharing, telling stories, cave paintings, and all that. And then we underwent this transformation into civilization, land ownership, animal ownership, animal, you know, and on and on. Hoarding, you know, money evolved out of that, laws, and essentially our whole modern culture. And looking at it from the big picture, I think is super helpful. So good job, great job on that, Adam. And I also want to thank you for putting for mapping out your perspective on collective intelligence and kind of an architecture for that. I still think there's a significant opportunity in simplifying that, and perhaps even creating, you know, perhaps even a couple slides to precede those that provide kind of a simple framework, and we can talk about that later offline. But really good job on both of those fronts, Adam. I'm going to need to get going here pretty quick, as I've got a lot of prep to do for the whole South America pilgrimage. But as promised, what I'd like to propose is maybe just literally in the next, I don't know, 5 or maximum 10 minutes, because I really got to go. We just talked briefly about essentially some headlines of news from the world related to climate, related to the 6th extinction that we're in the midst of, and related to humanity waking up. So very concisely, really without discussion, but just headlines. Hey, did you hear about this? I heard about this. I read about that. And I just say, just jump in, and then we can kind of build off of each other. Anyone have any headlines they want to share from recent weeks or even months?
Well, apparently Australia is suffering and has suffered one of the most brutal summers ever, if not the most. And yeah, you know, so we're getting ready for the Northern Hemisphere pretty soon. And we're going to probably see, you know, something going on here that's not going to be any good, of course. I just want to mention that.
I'll do a quick follow-on on that. If Australia is suffering the most severe summer ever, the Southern Hemisphere, they still have their air conditioner essentially intact, Antarctica. We've got a much thinner and much more fragile and much more damaged air conditioner in the north, being the Arctic. So just wanted just a quick follow on there. So I think we may be in for a very brutal summer.
Hey, Jamin.
Yes.
I've heard that Argentina, they may have a better climate than us, but I've heard that the ozone hole is more pronounced over Argentina, and it's reflected in their in the clothing bleaching and stuff like that. I've seen pictures of it. Is that true? And if it is, how are you going to deal with that?
Oh, wait, clothing leaching. In other words, the photons coming from the sun not being filtered by the ozone layer are actually leaching or bleaching people's clothing.
Bleaching. They bleach.
Bleach. Okay, just with sunlight that's not filtered with the ozone.
Correct.
I hadn't heard about that. Michael, any?
That's why people wear a lot of wide-brimmed hats down there.
Yeah.
And white shirts and stuff is what I hear.
Yeah.
Long sleeve.
Well, we'll definitely have to get big hats to shield our skin from the sun when we're down there. Anyway, I another thing I'm just, you know, I hear tidbits here and there about humanity is waking up, crossing a tipping point. I mean, if people in waiting rooms of hospitals in Oklahoma are talking climate change, that's a really significant indicator. just given their culture and the dependence on the Oklahoma economy on oil and gas. A very significant indicator. Any other headline?
Yeah, well, Jamin, I just wanted to ask you, I noticed that the governor of Washington is getting ready to join the crowded Democratic primary race. And, I just I didn't really read any details, but I noticed that he's going to make climate change be the centerpiece of his campaign. And I don't, I'm pretty sure he's probably not going into the exponential, but I do think that you see, you had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez mention maybe young people ought to think twice about having children. You see the governor of Washington getting ready to come in with, strong on climate change. I do think that probably over this next calendar year from today, we're going to see more and more of the upper middle classes around the world understand that everything is in jeopardy. And once they, get to a certain point, they will demand that, something be done. And that's going to, that's when the forces that are out there in this world are going to really are going to come together in a serious clash of what, reality is, or, things are just going to roll on. But I think that's something that, is out there in the world headlines. You see more and more references to climate change and that it's very, very serious. Again, it's hard to, at a certain point, how many tornadoes does it take? How many typhoons and hurricanes does it take? How many droughts? How many wildfires before people start to say, this isn't the way it used to be. What's going on here? And again, I do think the young people, the youth, are critical, but they must be given realistic information, not fairy tales about, we've got till 2100 or something, or references to grandchildren are going to be in danger. There's still a lot of that around, in addition to the total denial. The idea that it's going to ruin the economy. Yeah, it will ruin the neoliberal economy. But the fact is, it's starting to get out there, and the forces are starting to be marshaled.
So one of the things that is happening today, and I getting an echo, is the youth are moving. A huge youth movement is moving all over the world, and it started in Sweden with Greta Thunberg, and so now Extinction Rebellion has picked it up, and there's school strike for climate. There's Action Climate. There's Fridays for Futures. There's Green New Deal. There's all kinds of organizations that are coming out, that the youth are rebelling and, striking, taking days off of school and saying, we're not going to go to school because you guys won't pay attention to climate change. And I'm all for that. And our kids are smart. A lot of them, I even found a paper of my grandson's the other day that said that grade school kids were learning how to write apps for their phones. It's amazing what they can do, and they can help us on a platform. That's why I got them in there. It's their future we're building.
Very good. I want to welcome Alien Protocols, who just joined, and AP. We're actually just wrapping up now. We've got a relatively shorter day. We've been at it for 2 hours now.
Wow.
I see Dan has to go, but feel free to say hello, Alien Protocols.
just to enjoy your work and wanted to actually just listen in. Even if I caught a couple minutes, it's always a pleasure. You guys are so wise and ahead of the curve, and you're doing such important work, you know, obviously, you know. So just enjoy your guys' work so much.
Thank you, AP. Really, really appreciate that. Please feel free to, you know, join us for the whole session in future sessions. We start at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Happy to add you to the email list if that would help. But I always post it on my Facebook page and my Google Plus as well. And probably subscribe to the channel. Next week we'll probably have an abbreviated one as well, since I'm really hurrying to get the pilgrimage started in South America.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're kind of hustling right now. But really good to see you, and love to have you on. You know, just jump on.
Pleasure to be informed. It's a pleasure to see you guys and doing the magic. So,
thank you, AP. Really appreciate it. Well, you know, without you, it wouldn't be the same. I mean, even, you know, just watching, people watch, people comment, and I really, really appreciate all the input. That's what makes this program special. It's all of us.
Yeah, I've seen you, Alien, on chats and in Twitter, and I've seen you respond to a couple of posts I made, and so now I know who you are.
Yeah, I'm a real human, actually. It's a pleasure to meet, you know, just people who care about this stuff, you know, who are responsible enough to step up and try and brainstorm and do something about it, and not just be sofa critics. You know, we all have different perspectives, and, you know, all that stuff. You guys know all this stuff. You know, I'm not going to preach to the choir, but you guys know.
Well, the choir loves the preaching. It's all good reinforcement. Thank you, AP.
Well, if we have a chance, like I said in my last video, if there's an opening, mankind needs to stick his spear in it and widen the opening. You know, we need to give up. If we give up, we don't have any chance whatsoever.
And I think to a large degree, we're not aware of our full potential, each one of us.
Absolutely.
A lot more vast than we can really quantify. So, you know, I'm very much about the power of consciousness and the power of intention and the power of focus and using brain power and, you know, logic and, you know, empathy and all the basic, you know, logical things, you know, because they're logical, not just, you know, for any other reasons, and this is the right thing to do. But anyway, I don't want to stretch on the show more than it's supposed to be. You know, I'm just glad to say hi to everyone.
Thank you, AP. Appreciate that. Good stuff. Yeah, but just to build quick comment on what AP just said. You know, one of my metaphors is currently, just imagine that each of our brains is just like a single transistor that can hold either a 0 or a 1, right? And we're each doing our 0, 1, 0, 1, our individual computations. Put us all together into an integrated circuit. That's my metaphor for integrated humanity.
Yeah.
And bam, now, you know, we can take this essentially collection of 7.2 billion relatively dumb rocks, transistors, 0, 1, 0, 1. Oh, let me hoard, more for me. Put us all into an integrated circuit, and wow, we can really start doing some badass computation, which is the metaphor for consciousness, collective intelligence, co-creation of solutions, transformation of culture, transformation of our entire set of living arrangements, economy, everything else, the disappearance of money, et cetera, et cetera. So
it's just so wonderful. And, you know, it's just too logical. I hate this stuff. It's painful to hear this logical stuff. It's painful. It makes too much simple sense. You know, we all kind of have that gut instinct. And I love the analogy of each person being plus and minus. There's been tons of studies, Pear Institute, the global consciousness stuff, the power of, you know, the Maharishi effect, group consciousness. Maybe we already are that giant computational machine, and we each have to take more power and more credit for our consciousnesses and fight more and do it more collectively and individually, you know, both ways, maybe.
Yeah. Well, we are a giant collective. You know, we've got the internet. We're all communicating with each other. But to build off of some of Adam's important contributions, the computer that we are today, the collective computer that we are, has been infected with a virus. The virus is money and hoarding. So instead of the computer doing useful work, it's basically melting down. It's melting the hard drive. It's melting the RAM. It's melting itself in pursuit of individual hoarding. you basically have 7.2 billion madmen and madwomen with machetes hacking, slashing, burning, accumulating, divvying off, fencing off, destroying habitat, all for playing a game of mutual annihilation called hoarding, right? Anyway, I could go on and on, but I really appreciate your input, AP. And this is a great example of collective intelligence. Before you joined, AP, the conversation was what it was. You joined, you give some contributions, you know, seemingly you're just giving us kudos and all that, but you know, it's helped stimulate my thinking. And this is the nature of collective intelligence and the nature of conversation. Better together, and the more the merrier.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Just wonderful to hear you guys.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you, AP. All righty. Any final comments before we wrap for the day?
Jimmy, do you have any time to hold on a bit after?
Yeah. I'll hang out with you just for a few short minutes, and then we'll have an hour and a half break before we get on with our pilgrimage meeting. All righty.
Take care, gang. Best.
All right. Best wishes to all. Thanks so much to everyone for joining, and look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. Peace. And thank you, Adam. Good stuff, man. See you soon. All right, I'm going to stop recording now. So stopping recording. Stopping it. And thanks everyone for watching.
So, Jamin.
Yeah.